I want to be known as the most trusted woman in America.
You sat in Walter Cronkite's seat. Did you feel the weight of that?
Yes. Women have been taking a bullet and giving blood for this country since the Revolution. Number one person that I have not interviewed that I think is the biggest interview to get.
First of all, welcome to San Antonio. Welcome home.
Thank you. It's good to be home, Sarah.
You're a MacArthur grad.
I am.
And you're a Brimador.
Yes.
Right? I have a lot of coworkers who are MacArthur grads, and they're super excited about that.
Thank you. Yes. In fact, I went to St. Mary's Hall. I went to Cerna Elementary. I went to Garner Middle School. And I went to Douglas MacArthur High School. So
you're a military brat. That's why. That's why you came to San Antonio.
I am a military brat. And so this new book, We the Women, brought me here to San Antonio as part of the San Antonio Book Festival. But the added benefit is I get to hang out with my best friends, who I call the Texas Peeps, my girlfriends who I text with every single day.
So you still have a lot of friends here.
My best friends are here in San Antonio. It's changed a lot since I grew up here, but what brings me back are my friends.
I got to think, like, when you were a young girl here on the dance team at MacArthur, did you ever see yourself sitting in front of presidents and some of the most powerful world leaders?
Well, when I did not. But just to clarify, my friends were Brimadoras. They were on the dance team. I was head cheerleader, Sarah.
All right. You're a head cheerleader.
I was head cheerleader, and I ran varsity track for 4 years.
Yeah.
So I was also loved running the 400, and so competed a lot in track. But, I kind of look back on my high school years, and certainly I dreamed about big things. But I don't think I ever dreamed that, I would end up anchoring CBS mornings in New York or end up, in the seat that Walter Cronkite had for 20 years as the anchor of the CBS Evening News. No, that's beyond my wildest dreams.
And now you wrote this inspirational book, something that every man and woman should be reading and learning about.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, this is an interesting year. As a journalist, we're looking at America 250. So there's going to be a lot of that in the news. We're celebrating 250 years of America, its birthday. And so as I was looking towards this year, I thought, I want to uplift the stories of women. I've done that in my journalistic career. Mm-hmm. I've always been telling stories about women, whether they were in the military, in sports, in politics, in business, in power. And so this is a way to record and really excavate the stories of women in American history that we don't learn a lot about in school.
You're rewriting the origin of American history right now.
I don't know if I'm rewriting, because I think that word conveys a lot of different things. I think we're just doing is excavating and uncovering these stories that have been buried in American history, because women's stories weren't considered important. Women's contributions were not considered important. And in fact, the National Women's History Museum says 15% of what we are taught in school focuses on the accomplishments and achievements of women. Only 15%.
Wow.
So why don't we learn about the women that I profile in this book? That's why I call them the hidden heroes who shaped America.
Well, I can tell you I'm one of the fellow journalists who looks up to you.
Oh, thank you.
And seeing you have interviewed people like President Trump, President Biden. Is it you who does the legwork, or do you have a team who does it?
It's both. It's both. There are lots of times, for instance, I have interviewed Mohammed bin Salman, who is the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, twice.
So when you sit in front of him, somebody like him, do you look at him from a journalist perspective, or do you look at him as a human being that you're talking to?
Well, both. Absolutely both. You should always, as a journalist, realize someone is a human being, with thoughts and feelings, and absolutely. But that was in the first interview with Mohammed bin Salman was before the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. Mm-hmm. But I had been writing to him for 5 years because of my contacts in Washington. People had said, you should follow Mohammed bin Salman. This guy's going to be king someday. Just watch. And so, over time, there's things like that. Pope Francis is one of the most, exclusive gets of all time. No Pope or Holy Father has sat down with an American journalist. I was there at the conclave when he was elected Pope, and his name was Francis, which is my father's name. And, I immediately began writing letters to him. Now, in the year before we got the interview, the team of producers that I work with, Julie Morse, who's a senior producer of CBS News, who's here with me today, Anna Matrenga, who's our CBS News producer in Rome, They're doing a lot of the legwork, making sure that the letter that I write gets in front of the Pope, finding some timing about when would the Pope had a book coming out. We're like, oh, maybe he'll do an interview. And it wasn't that. It was, it was another time. But we just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. These interviews take years and years and years to get.
This is a great lesson in persistence. And
Yes.
when you say don't give up, to hear you say that you worked on one interview that takes 1 hour for years to get that.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yes. These are not, a lot of times when I interview authors or artists, they're promoting something, right? So that's an easier interview, to book because they are interested in getting in front of, potential viewers, right? So, but people like Pope Francis, they don't need to give interviews. Right. You know what I mean? So that's in convincing them and persuading someone that it's the right time to do an interview. So that's a much harder interview to get.
Is trust in media broken, or has media broken trust?
I think that trust in media is something that we need to rebuild, and it's something I feel very strongly about. I sat in the chair held by Walter Cronkite, and when he anchored the evening news, he was known as the most trusted man in America. And I want to be known as the most trusted woman in America. And how do you build trust? You build trust with integrity. You build trust with fairness. I think my record in terms of interviewing every living president, both Republican and Democrat, I try and build trust. How do you build trust? You show respect. But I also ask tough questions, I think, as people can see my work. It doesn't mean pulling punches, but it means being respectful and asking tough questions.
Do you ever get nervous about asking those tough questions in advance and think about how to word them?
I wouldn't be human if I wasn't nervous. But I've learned over time how to lock in. I've done it enough now. I have this saying is preparation builds confidence and confidence equals success. So for me in the preparation is where I might get a little nervous. So I'm fortunate that I work with an incredible team of journalists. So when we get a big interview, let's say, now the last big interview with President Trump, we found out about that like less than 48 hours before it happened. And I was actually across the country in Seattle, Washington. So I had to get all the way to Palm Beach, Florida. I had to get a suit to wear. and we had to lock in and write questions for what would be, we thought about a 45-minute interview. It ended up being an hour and a half. So for me, I'm nervous then because I'm like, I got to know everything. I got to be prepared for any follow-ups. And President Trump is a challenging interview because he's very quick. He's very, very quick.
Yeah, he is. And he's not afraid. He doesn't hold back.
No, not at all. And so I get nervous in the preparation, but not in the interview because I know I've prepared and done the work.
And how do you think that interview went?
I think it went really well. I think, a colleague of mine who has interviewed the president texted me and said it's the hardest interview in the world. And I think it was challenging, it was respectful, and it was newsworthy.
And did you speak with him after? I'm just curious to know if
Yes,
he said anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're in the room together, so as soon as as soon as the interview's over and you say thank you very much and the time has run out.
But I mean, did he say anything to you about the interview? Did he have any feedback?
Yeah, I mean, no, but he wasn't. It was a normal exchange.
Okay.
Yeah,
A normal exchange.
Yeah. He I think appreciated the challenging questions, and he obviously responded with challenging answers.
He certainly respects a strong person.
Yeah,
That's
for sure. For sure.
We learn about the founding fathers in school. Why is it women's stories are buried and left out of history?
Because men were writing the history. And this is an opportunity now for women to write the history. And that's part of what I'm trying to do with this book. And, starting from the Revolutionary period, of course, the Declaration of Independence is, in that incredible document, is the colonies declaring independence from Great Britain and King George III. And that document, the Declaration of Independence, that sentence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Well, that sentence is among the most important in human history. It not only set off the revolution, but it also kickstarted every great moral and political struggle in American history. Think about it. Those ideals about equality and freedom were at the heart of the abolitionist movement, at the heart of the suffrage movement, at the heart of the Civil War, the labor movement. And women were not a footnote in those movements. They were at the front, leading the charge in those incredible movements that have changed this country for the better.
If America remembered the ladies from the beginning,
Yeah.
what would our country look like today, you think?
It's a great question. That was what Abigail Adams had said to her husband, remember the ladies when you're writing the Constitution, and he dismissed her. I think this country would look different with more women in power. I do. I think women tend to lead differently. And look, that's not just my opinion. We know that you are likely to have a better outcome in the hospital if you are treated by a female surgeon. Warren Buffett, one of the great financiers and businessmen and investors in American history, said companies fare better with more women in charge and more women on the board. Warren Buffett is the oracle. So this is not just my view. We know that having women in power affects companies, businesses, countries for the better.
Now, as we talked about all these incredible women that you mentioned in your book, I want to talk about the modern women as well, yourself. Mm-hmm. You are going to go down in history. You are one of the very few women to solo anchor a major network newscast.
Yeah.
And you sat in Walter Cronkite's seat. I'm sure, did you feel the weight of that?
Yes. And I still have many of the wrinkles from them, and with my gray hair, I need to go get it colored as from that. It's such an honor because there have only been 3 women that have solo anchored an evening news broadcast, Katie Couric, Diane Sawyer, and Norah O'Donnell. And look, even had there not been, many women, I still would have taken that job, very seriously as I did, because you're the leader of the network and you're the managing editor and you set the tone, where the evening news is sometimes the tent pole of the entire news operation that flows down through the affiliates all across the country as well. And so it's a very challenging job Monday through Friday every night, in addition to when war breaks out, when there's a hurricane or a mass disaster, a school shooting, we travel all across the country to cover those things. And so just covering the news is difficult, but it's also emotionally challenging as well.
So if someone had to write a book about you, what would you want them to say in it about you?
All positive things.
I'm sure if they're taking the time to write a book, that in itself is already positive.
I know.
You're worth their time.
Well, I know. Well, no one says they're writing a book on me, but I will write.
I may one day, Norah.
Yeah, I know.
After this interview,
I know.
Thank you. It's incredible.
Well, I think what I'll probably do is write my own book about myself, my memoirs. One day, and I do already have the title, and I kind of already started writing it in my head. But there's just too many scores that I'll settle in the book that I'm going to wait till I'm a little bit older.
So we can expect some dirt coming out of the book.
I've got
some good gossip.
Much dirt.
Wow,
I got so much dirt. But no, then I wouldn't call it. I think no, it's not dirt. It's more just about the challenges that I face that I hope are instructive to people, over time, and just telling the stories that it's interesting. I've led a really interesting life.
Yeah, you have.
I've had a front row seat to history.
You didn't just sit behind the news desk and read scripts. You were out in Afghanistan. You were out in Iraq. You covered some of the world's major conflicts.
Yes,
you were out in the heart of all of it. Has your experience growing up as a military brat, how has that shaped your view of the world in journalism as you were covering these stories?
That's a really good question. I do think growing up as an Army brat gave me a lot of courage, because I've seen how people serve and sacrifice for their country. And I don't think those in the U.S. military get the attention that they deserve. I mean, being deployed for 6 months to 2 years away from your family. I think about a lot of these Navy sailors that are on the USS Ford that have been out there almost a year now. That deployment is not supposed to last that long. So it's very difficult. So it's given me, an appreciation of people who serve their country, growing up as an Army brat myself. I think it did give me a sense of fearlessness. And then, I can remember when I was hired at NBC, there was the head of talent. Her name was Elena Nachmanoff. And she said, we like to hire Army brats because they don't mind if we drop them in some country or some other city. They just figure out, how to make friends, how to talk to people. And that was, because I moved around a lot, had to find new friends all the time. I was good at just sort of talking to people no matter who they were, different kinds of people, and hearing their stories. That was part of being, growing up in the military.
Do you think that the founding fathers would be shocked by where women are today?
I don't know. I wonder what the founding mothers would think. You know what I mean? And I think the really interesting thing is how much women, despite having no legal rights, no voting rights, no access to education at the beginning of our country, still kept pushing for change and asking this country to live up to those values that are in the Declaration of Independence, about equality and about freedom and about liberty. That's what America is founded on. And I think now more than ever, we want to remember those things. That's why everybody wants to immigrate to here, in the United States. It's because of those values that are in the Declaration of Independence. I am the granddaughter of immigrants from Ireland. My grandmother was a Catholic who grew up in Protestant-controlled Northern Ireland. She stopped working in 8th grade because she was the oldest girl of 9 kids, and she had to go to work in a linen factory. And she went through barbed wire and barricades every day because it was no Catholics need apply. But she had to go to work to support her family.
And you dedicated the first few pages of your book to women in your family.
Yes, and my grandmother, who in 1930, the age of 23, left Ireland all by herself and came to this country. And I think a lot of people in this country are either who have parents who are immigrants or grandparents who are immigrants and understand how hard people in our family worked and how hard they worked to make sure that their daughters and granddaughters could achieve the American dream. And that's my family, certainly. And, my grandmother, when she came over from Ireland, she moved to Queens, New York, and she got a job as a orderly or attendant in a psychiatric hospital. And I wish that my grandmother, Mary Teresa, were alive today because she would know that her namesake, my sister, is now a chief surgeon at a major hospital. And that's the hope that exists in the American dream, is that here my grandmother had almost no education and worked long hours in a hospital, probably not even making minimum wage. And now my sister, her namesake, is a top surgeon.
So how important do you think it is for our kids to start learning more about these women who have contributed so much to the foundation and the building of this great country that we live in today at a young age? And will it shape them in the future?
Yes.
Could it inspire them to go on and do great things?
Yes, because I believe firmly in see it, believe it, and you will become it. I was a young girl. I grew up here in San Antonio, and my dad was in the Army, and so we followed the news a lot because it affected where my dad, if he would be deployed overseas. And so we were news junkies in my house. And I remember watching the TV and watching Barbara Walters. And I thought, who is this woman interviewing all of these heads of states who had the 10 most fascinating people on television and interviewed all the stars in Hollywood? And I thought, that's the only really prominent woman I'm seeing on television. I want to be her. So the stories we tell, the people we uplift, affect our culture. They affect our children. Think about how our kids, when they're young, they love athletes and sports and they want to be them, or the movies that they watch or people that you admire. Your culture, or singers or actors, or our culture affects who we want to become in our dreams. And so let's make sure we put women in their rightful place. And I wrote this book. I got emotional. It's almost 3 years writing this book. And as I did the audiobook, I got emotional and I wonder how my own sense of self and power and possibility would have been different if I had learned the stories of these women as a little girl. I mean that. If little girls read about these change makers, trailblazers, soldiers, inventors, would they want to be something different?
And I'd see it's possible.
It's possible, yes. Yes, so I do think it would change things. And I wish I had learned about these incredible women in American history when I was a young girl because, as I say, we the people can no longer ignore we the women.
I love that, Norah.
Thank you.
Some of the women that you chose to focus on, it was hard to believe that in 160 years, only one woman was honored with the Medal of Honor.
Well, in all of American history, yes. I mean, the if you were recently watching the President of the United States at the State of the Union, he awarded someone the Medal of Honor. It's that beautiful medal with the blue ribbon. The Medal of Honor is awarded for the highest bravery in combat. 3,500 Americans have received that recognition, and only one woman.
Right.
And her name is Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, a Civil War surgeon who assisted those in the Army. She was there at Bull Run and Fredericksburg, which were some of the bloodiest battles during the Civil War. She was captured, became a prisoner of war, and because of what she suffered, she was awarded the Medal of Honor. They later tried to actually take it away from her because she wasn't technically a member of the Army, because women weren't allowed to back in the 1800s, of course, and even in the early 1900s, be part of the U.S. military. But she refused to give the medal back. She wore it every day until she died. But it tells us something about women have been taking a bullet and giving blood for this country since the Revolution. And yet they didn't have many of the rights that were afforded to men. And I think that's a good story, an interesting story to learn as well. In the beginning, I tell the story of Deborah Sampson during the Revolutionary period. She dressed up as a man so that she could fight, in the Revolutionary War. So every war in American history, women have been there on the front lines.
The Wright brothers, that's another story we've grown
I'm
up learning
so
about.
glad
right?
you brought
I mean,
that up.
They invented, they built, they flew that first plane in the world. But you say that there's a sister who was just as important. Why was her story buried?
I'm so glad you brought that up. We know, right, the Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur, right? The first powered flight. Well, it turns out they had a sister named Katherine. And I am convinced if Katherine had been a man, she would have been considered the third Wright brother. She was the only one of the Wright siblings who actually went to college. She went to Oberlin College. This was at the turn of the century, leading into 1900. She ran the bike shop that ended up funding a lot of their experiments. She ended up really being their COO and their PR agent. When Orville crashes one of the planes, they're about to lose this Army contract. She goes and renegotiates it to make sure they don't lose their funding. She goes with them to Europe, where they stun everyone. She was one of the first women to go up in a plane. She helped her brothers get the Congressional Gold Medal, and President Taft called her the most important member of the family. In fact, one historian said there would be no Kitty Hawk without Kitty Wright. And then here's the thing that gets me about this story. I mean, I'm telling you. Not only is her story buried in American history, she is literally buried between her two brothers. If you go to the Wright brothers' grave in Dayton, Ohio, there's all these signs that say the Wright brothers. Follow the signs, and she is buried in between them, even though there is not a sign that points to her being there.
And yet nobody knew that story. Did you know it before you started doing your research and writing your book? What was the one thing that shocked you the most as you were doing your research?
How little even I know about our American history and women's contributions. I mean, I went to great schools, Douglas MacArthur High School, great school. I went to Georgetown University. I was not taught these stories. And so, even as someone who's a journalist who reads a lot of biography and a lot of history and interviews a lot of people just like you, these were not stories that came across my desk. And that's disappointing, and I think somewhat embarrassing and somewhat of an indictment of our education system.
How many women do you highlight in your book?
There are 35 women in this book that there are chapters on, but I mentioned so many other names in American history. I tried to focus mostly on hidden heroes, but there are lots of names in here. And look, this is not like an encyclopedia. It's not, there are names that you are going to be missing in this book. And so I want to just encourage people, you write about them too. Share those stories. Mm-hmm.
So what challenges did women face back then that you still think we face today? In 2026, where are women hitting that ceiling?
Oh, it's a good question because really, the 1970s was really a watershed in terms of gaining new legal rights. Ruth Bader Ginsburg argued 6 cases before the Supreme Court. She won 5 of them. That was the first time that the Supreme Court said sex discrimination is illegal. Title IX, which prevented sex discrimination in schools, that allowed women to play sports. So much has changed now. Women get more PhDs than men. They have more medical degrees, law degrees than men. So we've crashed through the educational glass ceiling. What are the same challenges? I think the one big challenge is that people, both men and women, don't accept women in power the way they should. There is some sort of allergic reaction to women in power.
So let me ask
It's
you
not
this.
feminine or something to be powerful. And so I really think we need to re-examine that.
I would say a woman walks into a room and she has to earn credibility. A man walks into a room and he has to lose it.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know, that's been my experience.
Yeah,
where
it
it's
is.
like women have to work
And,
twice as hard to prove themselves.
and
whereas-
here's what was interesting that you asked me what surprised me. In going back, I knew about the Seneca Falls Convention, right? That was the first women's rights convention in 1848. And I knew that they had written this Declaration of Sentiments. It was their manifesto, if you will. And it was borrowed from the Declaration of Independence. So the Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal. Well, the Declaration of Sentiments says all men and women are created equal. And then they kept going through with these 16 bullet points, making a case about what they called the absolute tyranny of man over woman. Again, this is 1848. They point out, they said, he has never permitted her to exercise her inalienable right to the elective franchise. They wrote another one, he has made her, if married, in the eye of the law, civilly dead. Point number 16 is the one that made me cry. And the whole Declaration of Sentiments is printed in my book, We the Women. And I want to read it to you because it says, he has endeavored in every way that he could to destroy her confidence in her own powers, to lessen her self-respect, and to make her willing to lead a dependent in abject life. That destroy her confidence in her own powers. And I can't tell you how many times that someone has tried to destroy my confidence. When I used to be at NBC for many years, I went to get a job at CBS, and I was going to be the chief White House correspondent, which is a really big job. Not very few women have had that job. And so I went to go meet with a senior man at CBS News, and conversation was going well. And then he said, well, how are you going to cover the White House with 3 young children at home? And I felt the blood rush up my neck, and I blurted out, do you ask men that question? And I got into the car after that meeting. I called my husband because he was very excited that I was going to get this new job. He said, how'd it go? And I said, that guy is a prick. But I did not allow him to destroy my confidence.
Curious what he said back to you when you asked him.
You know, I don't even remember. I think he kind of stumbled.
He's probably used to people not responding and saying something back.
I know.
And you let him know.
Yeah, I mean, I just
But
said...
it's true. I mean, you don't ask a man, are you going to be able to do this job with all these kids at home?
Well, first of all, it's illegal to actually ask. So just so that
Absolutely.
everyone knows.
Absolutely,
You
it's
cannot,
illegal.
if in a job interview someone asks you how many children you have, or that if you have elderly parents that you're taking care of, or your age, that is actually illegal. That is, you're not allowed to ask that question. But had I allowed him to destroy my confidence, I would not have ended up sitting in Walter Cronkite's chair. And I think that's the story really of many of these women in this book, is that somehow they had the guts and the confidence to keep going despite what was far worse than I've ever suffered in my life.
And that's what I was going to ask you. What traits did you find these women possessed? What did they have in common that made them the powerful women they became?
Yes. I mean, they were revolutionaries, right? They were patriots. They were courageous. But they also turned rejection into redirection, I like to say.
Yes.
Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell was the first woman to graduate from medical school, but she had been rejected from 11 medical schools, and she got in because they offered her admittance as a joke. They didn't think she was going to show up, and she did. And then she was denied a lot of entry into some of the, different, whether it was surgeries or whatever, and she just kept advocating for herself over and over again. So many of the stories in here, they face rejection and discrimination, and they just redirect. They just keep going. They persevere no matter what. They don't give up the fight. And I do think that's an important story for women to learn. One other, I think, important commonality or theme is that women are a way can affect change through community and sisterhood. And the abolitionist movement, moving to outlaw slavery, women bonded together in groups to do that. The suffrage movement, they bonded together in groups to affect change. So we're always stronger together when trying to affect change.
I hear this a lot when women are in power. Mm-hmm. A man can say the exact same thing, and it just comes as authoritative, like that's how it is.
Right. I think as more women ascend to these positions of power, both men and women need to examine how we talk about women in power. And I don't think it's only men, too, that are guilty of judging women in power. I think women are, too. I think women are guilty, too. So I think we all need to think about the things we say about women who are leading a business or who are on camera or who are running for political office or who may be the head of a hospital or a chief surgeon. What are the biased comments that we make about these women that have nothing to do with the quality of their work? And it's got to stop, and we have to stand up for one another.
So you're saying in order to make that shift and see some real change, it begins with our words and what we say.
I do, and I have this shirt, when women support women, great things happen. And I believe that so firmly. And I also believe when men support women, great things happen. And so we want our daughters to be able to do whatever they want to dream to be.
You have 2 daughters, right?
I do.
So do you have that conversation at home with them?
I do, although I think, look, they're still young, so they're not out in the mean world that exists out there. But they have much more confidence than I did at their age. They call out sexism, discrimination, in 2 seconds. They don't
because
hesitate.
they've observed you?
Perhaps. I also just think it's generational. I mean, I work with a lot of young women at CBS and in writing this book, and they run circles around everybody else. I mean, they're beyond competent. They're beyond collaborative. And those are the kind of people I want to work with, is people just who excel in every way. And so women have that ability. So let's change a lot of the problems in America by allowing women to ascend to powerful positions. Let's fix the education system in America. Let's fix the healthcare problems in America. Let's fix political partisanship by putting more women in power.
Who's the most intriguing woman you've ever interviewed?
I've had the good fortune of interviewing a lot of women, but the most intriguing woman was Malala Yousafzai. And for those of you that may not remember Malala, she is from Pakistan and was nearly assassinated by the Taliban for sticking up for the rights of girls. There are 150 million girls around the world who have no access to education. And Malala was nearly assassinated for that. And, I had followed her story.
And at a young age.
Yes, at 16,
yes.
She's the youngest recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. And after that assassination, I wanted to get the first interview with Malala. And I did not. Diane Sawyer got the first interview. But guess what? I got the second interview. I did not give up. And I have stayed in touch with Malala and interviewed her many times since. But the first time I met her, I swear, Sarah, she had like a glow about her.
Yes.
Of something when you just meet someone who can change the world and is changing the world. And I asked her in this interview, I said, "Are you afraid because the head of the Taliban says he still wants you dead?" And she said, "I may be afraid of ghosts and goblins, but why should I be afraid of someone who's afraid of me?" And it's like, even when I say it now, it's like I give myself the goosebumps. Because think about that. Why are you afraid of someone who's afraid of me? And think about ever in your life, Sarah. I'm sure you've had these instances where people say things to me or say, things that I know I disagree with strongly or are sexist or biased or whatever. And what I just say is, you know what? That's on them. It has nothing to do with me. That is on them. And I am not going to be bothered by them or afraid of them. That's on them.
It's that inner peace that you have to have with yourself.
Right, which does not come easy. No.
It does not. It takes work. And that's something so important that I think the young girls need to know too, that nothing comes overnight. You have to work on yourself. And you can get there. And Malala has always been one of my idols, by the way. So we share that sentiment.
Good.
I hope.
And I would just add
that
that inner confidence does not come from TikTok. No. It comes from books.
Yes.
Is that bad?
Well, you know what? I feel like you're talking to them as you're probably talking to your daughters.
Books.
Yeah.
Books is where we learn about our heroes.
Who's the one person you've never interviewed you would like to interview?
Well, Justin Timberlake.
Is it?
I'm sorry. I can't even believe I said him first. Because that's kind of a...
Has he been like a crush or something?
No. Yeah. It's interesting. It's just interesting, some of the people. But honestly, the top of my list, number one person that I have not interviewed, that I think is the biggest interview to get is Taylor Swift. I think she is a cultural icon. Her concerts proved it. A worldwide star. Her concerts raked in billions of dollars, so she's a businesswoman, but she's also the poet of our generation. One of the things about her concerts is you have fathers with their daughters. You have mothers bringing sons.
You have girls watching football even if they don't care about it.
Because of Taylor Swift.
Because of Taylor Swift.
You have people across the political spectrum dust all that partisanship off their boots or their sandals or whatever to attend a concert and listen to the greatest female artist of our time, Taylor Swift. So that's one. And by the way, in writing this book, on a lot of Saturdays and Sundays, I put in my AirPods, I put her tour playlist on shuffle, and I just to all the Taylor Swift songs.
So if you were to write a book about the modern women who are shaping America now, Taylor Swift would make your book. It sounds
yes,
like
and she's in there. She is in there. Okay. Yes, she is, because in the last the book is the 250 years of American history, and it's broken up into 5 parts, 50-year parts. The last 50 years, it was challenging to write. Like, I couldn't write about Serena and Venus and not write about Coco Gauff and all of the other incredible, great tennis players.
Right.
There are just too many great tennis players and female athletes of this day. You know what I mean? So I decided instead to title the last chapter in this book My Lifetime, because I'm 52 years old, and about what has changed for women. And so in the section about cultural and economic power, I talk about Taylor Swift. I talk about Greta Gerwig, who is the producer of the first billion-dollar film Barbie, where America Ferrera gives that speech about it's literally impossible to be a woman. And these cultural icons, like Beyonce, that are shaping our country and culture, I think, in ways that we still even can't fathom and imagine, because they are showing new forms of power that I was talking about earlier that we haven't experienced, a type of power in a different way that young girls and old women like me or middle-aged women like me.
You're not old, Norah. We're probably close in age, so you are not. I refuse to think you're old.
Yeah.
So do you identify as a feminist, and do you think putting a label like a feminist helps women in power or limits them?
I do identify as a feminist. And the really interesting thing is, growing up in Texas, I was not taught by anyone in particular, I was taught that feminist was a bad word. And I'm really disappointed by that. Being a feminist is like being a humanist. Like, do you believe in the human race and the quality of all people? Yes. Do I believe that, I'm a faithful person. That's what God teaches. And so to believe that women should be treated equally, that's what a feminist is. Yes, absolutely. And for anybody that puts any other label on feminism does not understand history.
Are you still hopeful for America?
Always. I'm extremely hopeful for America. Absolutely. And this is the greatest country in the world. It is. And this book, We the Women, shows that. We have had huge struggles throughout American history. We had a civil war where women were helping to repair this country. They were the leaders of the abolitionist movement. They helped repair this country afterwards. World War I, women fought. World War II, women led the civil rights movement to make sure that Black Americans, that Native Americans had the right to vote and had legal rights. That makes me incredibly hopeful. So as long as people still believe that their vote counts, that they can protest, that's what the history of America is about: protesting. Voting, protesting, participating in democracy. I am always hopeful about that, yes.
So I follow you on Instagram, and I see your pictures of your beautiful family.
Thank you.
I often wonder, with everything that you have to do, because I know it's a struggle for me sometimes, how do you balance that work life with family life with your girls and your husband?
Look, I think it's challenging for everyone, but I always think about sort of, the scales of justice. And life is not in balance. So I kind of reject the premise of that question, because I think women are supposed to hold everything in balance. We don't have to hold it in balance. We don't. We're just going to do it our way. You know what I mean? And so sometimes work gets a little more attention than family. And then sometimes when we don't may perhaps, can change that scale. We give family more focus when we can, like, on the weekends. And so I think but I think trying to meet this idea that everything is in balance will just lead to disappointment, right? And so what I've just tried to do is surround myself with a strong support system. My husband helps out a lot, grandparents. I've always had a nanny, someone who can help as well. Then they go into school and it's, but I was working 7 days a week, a lot, between anchoring and doing 60 Minutes. So build a strong support system around you at home. If you want to be a leader at work, you have to build a strong support system around you. It can be challenging. And sometimes your spouse is not going to do all of that. And so you've just got to find a way to do it in order to succeed. And people have to be honest, I think, about that conversation.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not.
That's for sure. I could talk to you all day, honestly.
I know.
You
and I
have
could
to
talk
go.
about my book all day. I love it. Yeah.
And I know you have to go. But before you do, Fiesta is around the corner. Are you a Battle of Flowers kind of girl, or are you a night in old San Antonio Fiesta girl?
Battle of Flowers kind of girl. Battle of Flowers. And I have not had, maybe I will tonight, I haven't had tamales in so long.
Ooh, I was going to ask you if you have like a go-to spot that you like here, or what do you like to eat?
It's been so long since I lived in San Antonio, so I don't know.
Whataburger?
Yeah.
I have to ask you that.
I know Whataburger. Love Whataburger. Love Whataburger.
What's your favorite? Do you have like an order in there that you always, are you going to get one while you're here?
I don't think I'll get one. I don't eat as many hamburgers now at 52, but I am going to have a chalupa tonight.
Ooh.
Maybe a bean and cheese. I'm gonna overeat tonight.
Are you coming back for Fiesta?
No, I'm gonna be on book tour.
Did you do a lot of Fiesta when you were here?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, on that note, I have a gift for you. Our Ken's 5 Fiesta medals. You're the first to get them. I don't even have one, Norah. And it's for you and your team, Julie.
Oh my gosh.
So
the Ken's 5
Fiesta
medal. That is so cool. Wow. Thank you so much. This is new for
brand
Ken's
new.
5?
This is for this year, for Fiesta 2026.
Great. So who's going to wear these?
Right?
Yes. And look, it matches my dress. It matches my dress.
Nice. Yes.
Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was an incredible interview. I really appreciate.
What do you want to tell San Antonians?
Love you, San Antonio, and thank you for an incredible childhood. My best friends are all still here. I love my Texas peeps, and I love San Antonio.
Oh, we love you. Thank you, Norah.
Thank you. Thank you.